The tale of chasing the lost waters. Once upon a time, in a future far beyond distant lands, the world had become almost unrecognizable. Once, there had been mighty rivers flowing and deep blue seas embracing the earth. But over time, the magic of water had faded. A drop of water had become more valuable than gold. The soil cracked, trees bowed their heads, and rivers fell silent. The world silently wept in the shadow of thirst. In this dry world there lived a curious boy named Arda. Every morning, as the first rays of the sun appeared, Arda would hold his grandfather's hand and head toward the town's water station. The water station was where the entire town gathered, because only enough water was given to each family to last for the day. While waiting in the water line with his grandfather, Arda was always filled with nagging questions. "Grandfather," he would ask, his eyes full of curiosity, "why do we get so little water? Didn't rivers once overflow and flow freely?" A deep sadness appeared on his grandfather's face as he gently patted Arda's hair and said, "Ah, yes, my child. Long, long ago, water flowed abundantly everywhere. But people didn't appreciate it. They wasted it. And now, water has become so scarce that every drop is precious." Hearing this, Arda felt a deep sorrow in his heart. How could they have used water so recklessly, he wondered. Determined to find answers, the next day, after school, he made his way to the grand library. The library was filled with dusty shelves, holding the secrets of ancient times. As Arda wandered between the shelves, a book caught his attention. As he flipped through its pages, he learned how people once had an abundance of water and wasted it without thinking. In ancient times, people watered their gardens for hours, left taps running, and even let the water flow while brushing their teeth. They didn't hesitate to waste water, not realizing that one day it could run out and rivers could dry up, lakes disappear. Arda was deeply affected by what he read in the library. He felt sadness and regret in his heart. If only people back then had known the value of water. If only they had learned to protect every drop, he thought to himself. With these thoughts weighing on him, he slowly walked home. When he arrived home, his grandfather greeted him with a warm smile, as always. Hugging his grandfather, Arda said, "Grandfather, today I read old books in the library. I learned how people in the past used water carelessly without thinking. That's why there's so little water now, right?" Tears welled up in his grandfather's eyes as he lovingly looked at his inquisitive grandson. "Yes, my child," he said. "Unfortunately, in the past, people thought water was endless, but they were wrong. Now every drop of water is as valuable as gold." Arda's deep curiosity touched his grandfather's heart. "Come," said his grandfather, "let me tell you another story from the past. This story will help you understand the value of water even more." Once upon a time, in a beautiful village where water flowed abundantly, the villagers didn't appreciate the water and used it as if it would never run out. Every morning they would wake up and water their gardens for hours, playing in the river, unaware that one day their water sources might dry up. One day the village elder came to the square and warned the people, "Dear villagers, you think water will always be here, but one day these sources could run out. Instead of wasting it, you must use it carefully. A world without water will lose its greenery and beauty." But the villagers didn't listen. They continued to waste water, and over the years the rivers began to dry up. The trees in the village withered, the fields cracked from drought, and children could no longer play in the river. The gardens dried up from lack of water. In the end, the villagers realized how right the elder had been. But by then, it was too late. Their water was nearly gone. From that day on, the villagers learned to value water and used every last drop carefully. But unfortunately, there wasn't enough water left to make up for their mistakes. The elder gathered the villagers one last time and said, "You didn't appreciate water, but now you must learn to use it wisely. Perhaps one day we can become a village where water flows freely again." When Arda's grandfather finished the story, he turned to Arda and smiled lovingly. This story reminds us how precious water is and how important it is to protect it. Because of the mistakes of the past, our water has diminished, but we must learn from those mistakes and protect our water. Arda listened carefully to his grandfather's words and never forgot how valuable water was from that day on. One day, a scientist came to the town from distant lands. People knew him as a great hope because everyone believed he could find a solution to the world's dwindling water supply. As soon as the scientist arrived, he gathered the town leaders and told them about a machine he was working on that could turn seawater into drinking water. "This machine can turn the salty waters of the seas into fresh, drinkable water," he said. But there was a problem. The machine required a lot of energy to work, and this stretched the town's resources too thin. The scientist turned to the town leaders and said, "We must find a way to make this machine work with less energy, but only if we all work together can we solve this problem." The townspeople were filled with great excitement and hope at this news. Everyone dreamed of having plenty of water once again. The news spread quickly throughout the town. When Arda heard about it, he was so excited his heart felt like it would burst. The lessons he had learned about water scarcity deeply moved him, and he desperately wanted to help the wise scientist. Without wasting any time, he went to the scientist and asked, "How can I help you?" Seeing the light and curiosity in Arda's eyes, the scientist smiled. "The help of a smart and curious boy like you would be a great support to me," he said. Inspired by the scientist's words, Arda felt a great determination grow within him. "I must do everything I can to make water abundant in this world again," he thought, and decided to help the scientist. For weeks, months, and even years they worked tirelessly. Sometimes at night, Arda would look up at the stars and think, "One day our efforts will bear fruit." Finally, after long and hard work, they invented the miraculous machine that turned seawater into fresh, drinkable water. The machine took the salty waters of the sea and magically transformed them into sweet, fresh water. Thanks to this miraculous machine, the people of the town regained access to water. Though it didn't flow in waterfalls, every drop became more plentiful and precious. But even in the joy of having water again, Arda didn't forget to remind his people of an important truth. "Remember," he would say, "we must value this water. We must never repeat the mistakes of the past. Every drop of water is our future." Years passed, and the water scarcity slowly ended. People began to work again in the re-greened fields and listen to the joyful sound of flowing water. But now, everyone knew just how valuable water was. Arda's words were passed down from person to person, generation to generation. When Arda grew up, he became known as a wise man in his town. His story became one of the most beautiful tales told to children. Every night before bed, children listened to Arda's stories about the value of water and learned to use it carefully. Every time the townspeople drank water, or used even a drop without waste, they remembered Arda's advice. And so a generation grew up that valued and protected water. The world returned to the beautiful days when water was abundant. But thanks to the tale of chasing the lost waters, people never forgot the value of water. To them, every drop was a treasure, and they did everything they could to protect that treasure.